The current happenings unfolding in the banking sector is alarming and unfortunate in many ways, although for many there seems to be a silver lining for the financial sector once the dust settles. The thousands of Ghanaians who will be left without a job when this saga is over is a major concern to all. A school of thought says that breaches in credit delivery, poor risk management, challenges with corporate governance and greed are some of the causes that led to the collapse of several banks. Tonight on Talking Point, we continue the discussion on the financial sector and ask who should be held culpable for the fall of these banks. Should Bank of Ghana be exonerated in this matter? My guests are already seated, and you can watch us live on GBC 24 on GTV, and you can listen to us on Unique 95.7, as well as those of you who want to use social media. We stream on gbcghana.com. I have two gentlemen with me today, and I hope that we can do justice to this topic. Your messages can also come to me, and I'll do well to read them on WhatsApp 055-744-6429, 055-744-6429. My name is J.O. Chajman, and this is Talking Point. And let me just start the show and say that on behalf of Talking Point and the management of GBC, we'd like to extend also our condolences to the family of our late diplomat, Mr. Kofi Annan, and I'm sure my guests would like to also put in a word or two to express our sympathy and condolence to the family and to the people of Ghana. Next to me, Dr. Richmond Tuahen is a banking consultant, and he's also a corporate governance consultant, and he joins me this evening, and he's from Richmond Consult. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Next to him is Mr. Habib Adam, who is an economist. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And I'll take a word each from you, a few seconds each, if you want to express your condolences.
It's quite sad to hear about such an august and a well-respected diplomat who has not done only great things for Ghana, but to the extent that the whole world. It is quite sad to have lost such a man who has contributed to the world peace and help us to reform the United Nations. And our heart goes with the family and the children and the wife. And we pray that the Almighty God would give him a good resting place.
Mr. Adam?
And Doctor was a great man. He saved the world, not only Ghana, and we are very proud. We can say that he lived a full life. And we can only hope that he will rest in the bosom of the Lord. And we also wish to confer with the family to. We hope to say that the loss that they have gotten and that has befell them, I'm sure we pray that God will also seek to fill that gap for them.
Okay, so there we have it. Words of sympathy and condolence from our panel on the loss of one of the greatest Ghanaians, well, in my time at least, that I have come across. And I met him twice, and I'm privileged to say that he was an amazing man. Okay, so gentlemen, let's go now to the topic at hand, the banking sector and matters arising. And over the past few weeks, quite a lot has happened. And there has been accusations, counter-accusations about people being involved and those who have said they were not involved and all of that. But let me start from, I want to start from the premise of the Bank of Ghana and whether both of you think that the Bank of Ghana cannot be exonerated in this matter. I'll start with you, Dr. Tuahene.
Thank you. I don't think Bank of Ghana can be exonerated from these infractions and weaknesses. It's a regulatory governance failure, as far as I'm concerned. Somebody will say, why? If we look at the speed and the alacrity where licenses were issued to various people to start banking, there was a big flaw. And I remember in the IMF report 2011, it specifically said that we have a weak licensing regime in Ghana. And when they said that, they meant the way licenses were being given all over for the universal banking license. And also to add to it, they made it specific that savings and loans were just being upgraded into universal banking without the necessary systems or infrastructure, and even the people and the skill. Unfortunately, if you read about what has happened, about 3 of them that has gone were all savings and loans. Migrating from savings and loans in universal banking to such a considerable task. But if you look at it, they decided to upgrade them all to universal banking license. In addition, there have been regulatory forbearances. When I say that, actions were delayed in some instances where the act should have fallen earlier to cut our losses. They delayed it. We look at the emergency liquidity support that have been given to certain banks. Let me say it here categorically. Practice for emergency liquidity support is given to solvent bank, but illiquid. There's a difference between solvent and illiquid banks.
Right.
But in Ghana, what you realize that some of the banks were both insolvent and at the same time illiquid. So when you give them the support, it means you're throwing good money after bad money.
I mean, it's quite interesting that you say that. And I'm going back to the report that you commented on, the IMF report 2011. It is clear that the failures of the system is what, I mean, coming forward, has created what we've seen today. Is that not the point?
It is completely, you are right. Our failure to address those issues, has brought us to that far. And again, they were even issuing licenses to politically exposed persons, where due diligence has not properly been done. When we say PEPs, we mean politically associated people being given license. If you do that, what you're doing is that you're just going to create a problem in the future.
But politically exposed persons are Ghanaians, and if the license given to them is legit, then there's nothing wrong with that.
I gave a caveat. Proper due diligence.
Okay.
Proper due diligence. I'm not saying don't give it to them.
Right.
But there must be extensive and comprehensive due diligence to find the proper fit test. There is a proper fit test, and if you read the Basel Supervision 206 and 2013, it said if licenses are being given to people, we should do proper fit test. Are these people fit to hold licenses, believing that they will do the right thing? And that is where we failed, and has brought us to contributed to some of these situations that we are in now. What other people don't seem to understand, and if you read Brambridge publishing article 1998, it said local banks in Africa has failed, where licenses have been given to politically exposed persons. And the reason being is that they go and create insider lending or connected and related lending.
Interesting.
Instead of pursuing the banking that has been licenses that have been given to them. So the article, if you wouldn't mind, let me read what Brambridge has said. Brambridge in 1998 said that one of the greatest problems with African local banks is that when licenses are given to them, they tend to create financial octopuses. What it means that they create business conglomerates where monies are siphoned from left and right.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. The banking become the center, and they use it in financing a group of businesses. So in the end, there is always be a non-performing or liquidity gap.
Wow, I'll come back to you. That very, very interesting thoughts there. Habib, you heard what Dr. Tuahene said.
Absolutely.
He puts the blame squarely at the doorstep of the regulator. And do you feel the same way?
Yes, I feel the same way, except that I think that the problem is multidimensional, blameable on the various stakeholders in the economy: the government, the regulator, the financial institutions, and the customers themselves. But I don't know whether you want to limit it to the regulator.
Well, I mean, you can say wherever you wherever the axe falls is fine by me.
Because Doc has already spoken about the regulator, I just want to add a few things before I come to the government part. Now, the regulator, Bank of Ghana has the supervisory authority over the management of financial institutions in this country. How do they do the licensing? Like Dr. mentioned, look at our population, 30 million people in Ghana. And we have over 30 banks.
It used to be 33, now
exactly.
it's dropping.
But with Nigeria with 180 million, they have about
22 banks, yeah.
And there is something that Doctor mentioned. I call it transitioning financial institutions. That is those who started as microfinance to savings and loans to universal banks. These are one-man businesses that transform into big institutions. And as they transform, the shareholding structure does not change that much. So the same person controls the entire process. And in most of the time, they micromanage everybody. Even when they poach experts from various banks and they come, they are still not allowed to work because they still micromanage everybody. And these activities, we expect the Bank of Ghana, the regulator, to be able to pick up some of the challenges in those sectors. How are the auditing done? Because the financial institutions are supposed to send prudential reports weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, and then yearly. Mm-hmm. After that, they're supposed to go on site. But how are these audits conducted? Because the prudential report should give you indication as to what is happening, your assets, your liabilities, and all that. And so when they go to the on-site, they go to check the books themselves to see whether what they have been filing is. But most of the time, we see that they are basically tea parties. They just come to sit at the conference room, take the tea, and then whatever is given to them, they audit that, give their comments, and then go. And the same thing happens. So I expect that for the regulator to be effective, the on-site audit should either be outsourced or they should improve in bringing in system or experts who can go into the banking software of the various institutions. Because usually when you go, they give you their financial, they give you their report. You request for the file, they bring it, they look at it, and then they do their auditing. But the regulator should be able to go in there, go into the system and pull the information. Through that, they'll be able to know the exact situation, what is happening. Because most of these institutions, what usually happens is that, that is why when people were blaming some of the boards and others, I said, look, sometimes in some of these institutions, they prepare different type of financials. The real financial and the one for the regulator and the board. So if you are not involved in the day-to-day activity, you wouldn't actually know what is happening.
Well, I was going to come to the board because quite a lot has been said about boards.
So let me just touch more on the government aspect.
And then we'll come to the board.
Now, to me, I think we have been unfair to the financial institutions to some extent. Because if you look at the role of successive government, government policies, it has contributed immensely to the situation we have today. Because if you look at
Are you referring to governments borrowing locally?
Not only that, but even in terms of managing the macroeconomic conditions of the country, the environment. Because if the government is not able to manage their macroeconomic environment, what happens is that the banks will lose the value of their capital. The last time that was in the later part of 2008, when we did the capitalization to $60 million. At that time, the cedi to the dollar was 1-to-1. So $60 million then was equivalent to 60 million Ghana cedi. Today, what is the exchange rate? 4.8 divided by the 60 million. You are getting almost 12.5 million. So the value of the original 60 million is now $12.5 million. Is that the fault of the bank? That is government policy. Inflation. We have always had double inflation until recently. Until last week when we had it. Yes.
Something.
The first time in almost 5 years. We've always had double inflation. If I have my money to save in the bank, and I know that we have double, so I know that at the end of the year, the value of my money will have depreciated by so and so percent.
Right.
So if I'm putting my money into a fixed deposit, I'm going to demand a rate that is higher than the inflation rate.
Absolutely.
That is why our banks are having high fixed deposit rate. And what is even worrying is that, like you mentioned, government borrowing the domestic market. Some time past, government was borrowing close to 25%. If government is borrowing at 25%, which is risk-free, well, at what rate should the private sector borrow? And so, if the private sector should go and borrow, which is usually above 30 or 30%, what happens is that we do not really look at the real consequences of it. The real consequences of it is that they go out there to buy goods from China, Dubai, and other. Meanwhile, our neighboring countries, they borrow at around 7%. Our cousins in Nigeria, they borrow around 15%. The Lebanese community, they go to their home countries to borrow. Chinese borrow at single digit. But they all go to the same market in Europe, Dubai, and China to bring their goods back home. When they come back home, I'm a Ghanaian businessman. I borrow from my banks at what rate? Of 30%. They have borrowed 7%, 12%.
You can't compete.
You can't compete. And what happens? So at the end of the day, we see our Ghanaian businesses, they have their business cycles widen. Instead of taking a month or two to sell off and then go back, it will take them about 6 months or more. And whilst this time is going on, they are paying salaries, utilities, their cost of operation become high. At the end of the day, they are not able to pay. What happens to their loans? But these are our neighbors, and because we have also allowed our retail market for the foreigners to just come and play there. So we are in effect doing
I think, Dr. Chene, the challenges are multiple. And they seem to have been created by not only governments, but ourselves as well, as individuals. And, you know, and what interests me, what struck me with what Habib said, was also the fact that the cost of borrowing, if you look around, I know that some West African ECOWAS countries, some of them have 7%, some 8%, Senegal 9%, and things like that. We can't compete even in our sub-region. We are not able to compete. You know, it's a worrying situation.
Are taken over by the foreigners.
The micro instability, if we are to look at it from this, the micro instability, high inflation, government borrowing, excessive budget deficit financing through the banking system, high inflation, all these things have contributed to even the non-performing.
Absolutely.
Like Habib has said, if you pay an interest rate of 30%, you need to make a gross income of about 50% before you can stay in business. Because if you don't make 50, you haven't talked about your other expenses. How are you going to do it? So microeconomic instability, high inflation, high government borrowing, all these things has fuel into the banking sector. But you see, in as much as we do also want to do that, in the same vein, some other banks seem to be doing well. So if you,
I like when you say seem to be.
Because after all, they publish figures and that stands the good time. But what actually strikes me most is that apart from the regulatory failure, governance failure, there is a serious corporate governance failure in this country. Shareholders complicit. All these information we are hearing and seeing this morning, this evening when I was coming here, one institution where you have shareholder and related lending to that magnitude. Why is it not happening in other institutions like our companies from Nigeria, compatriots from Nigeria and UK and South Africa? Because they have realized that before a bank will succeed very well, you need a very strong and good corporate governance, which is an element missing in Ghanaian business. I've been in banking, I've worked in bank to senior level in this country. And if I share my experience, as Habib was saying, they are just on paper a bank with board and everything. It is micromanaged by a few people. I have had that experience.
So what you're saying is that you could have a board in place, yet the board doesn't know what actually takes place on the floor of the bank.
Even if they know, they cannot make any good input into it.
Absolutely.
Why is that? Then why is the board in place?
They are rubber stamp board.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we have what we call board capture. We have passive board. And these are all happening in Ghana. People will just be there as board. But as to whether they work effectively, contribute efficiently, there's nothing to write home about. It also goes about who qualifies to be on the board. If you look at the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision, 2015-2010, it gives you specific qualification for both people and experience. Not only qualification. You need experience, you need expertise, you need skills. And when you combine, they call it the competences. But you see people sitting on board
who don't even have an understanding of the financial...
Yes, and even that talks about the regulatory failure.
Yeah.
When the shareholders propose board, it is the duty of the Bank of Ghana to say that you cannot be a board member of a bank. But unfortunately, maybe 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, they get the pass and go. And when they go there, they sit there, I'm sorry to use the word, like an Egyptian mummy. So things are pushed to you and you sign.
Without even doing
not
due
even
diligence.
possibly do understand what is going on. Because you see, banking is a highly regulated and is a very complex business. You're taking deposit from here and creating loans. Don't forget, you have to put some at central bank.
Right.
For every 100 cedis, you put some, I think 9 cedis there.
Yeah.
And if you want to invest it, you don't put everything in loans. Some would have to go into treasury bills and all those things so that your mix will help you to go. But if I'm sitting there and I have no knowledge about what the whole thing is done, you just say and you give fair complete. But that's not that exonerate you from saying that, as for me, I don't know, or I didn't have. Because in Latin, we saw ignotia non excuta.
Yeah.
Ignotia non excuta is that ignorance no excuse of your failures.
Yeah.
So I believe when Bank of Ghana's law is to be able to screen, that is why they are now talking about proper fit test. Previously, there was no proper fit test in this country. There was no proper fit test. Because other than that, certain people would not have even gotten license to have banks, let alone be board members.
Wow. That's too deep to take in.
Absolutely.
You need to grasp on it a little bit more. Habib, let me ask you this question, which lingers in my mind, and ever since this this whole financial sector thing has been going, I've been wondering. The government appoints boards to certain banks.
Yeah.
The Bank of Ghana is a regulator for these banks. I have never once heard or seen the Bank of Ghana refuse the government appointee on any bank in this country, not once. Does that tell you that the Bank of Ghana is not as autonomous as it says it is?
Well, that is what Doc mentioned, regulatory failures. Because what they are supposed to do, they are not doing. And the issue is that, you see...
What are they supposed to do when the government appoints people to the board
already
of a bank?
The rules are there. The rules are there who qualifies to be on the board. So if a government appoints a person and you think that the person does not qualify, then you have to write to government, say, for so and so reason, we are unable to admit this person. But that is not being done. Not even government, even the financial institution that we are talking about.
They are boards.
They are boards, yes. Because some of them, in fact, the way they don't even understand why they are even board members. That is why sometimes you hear these issues of, I'm this or I'm not that. You understand? So I think what going forward, what the regulator must do is to spell out the conditions, the rules, who qualifies to be a board. And that should be public for everybody to know. And whether it is government or any financial institution, I think that should be made clear. Because already we have the risk management framework. It's already there. The various prudential guidelines, they are already there. And so, but for what we are hearing today about the lapses and the kind of fraud that happened in our banking industry, it's mind-boggling. So that means that the regulator went to sleep. But the good thing is that I'm happy that at least for now, we are seeing some actions. Because this should have happened long time ago. But when it happened, if it had happened long time ago, I'm sure we'll have cut our losses.
But let me ask you this question, and I'm sure Mr. Chairman will want to take a bite at it. Why is it that a private individual opens a bank, he takes deposits from the general public or from customers, yet when he's failing, the Bank of Ghana then decides that I will take the taxpayers' money and prop him up for his failures, and then he's allowed to do whatever he likes with that money that the Bank of Ghana has given him. For some of them, like you call the octopus opening companies with some of this money. Why is it that the Bank of Ghana can do that when they know very well exactly what is happening with these banks? Almost all the banks
it's a difficult
situation the same process.
Because sometimes you are trying to prevent panic in the system. You understand? So because you don't want the panic in the system, that will collapse the entire system. So we try to manage it because we are dealing with correspondent banks outside. So when they begin to realize that, look, your situation, your financial services sector in the financial services in Ghana is deteriorating, they will downgrade you, and that will affect us in our ratings. And so that is why sometimes the bank comes in to provide this kind of liquidity support. But what I don't understand is why would the regulator provide such a huge liquidity support of over 620 million to a bank?
To one bank? To
one bank. When as at now, the minimum capital is still 1 because it's at the end of the year before we get to the 400. The 600 for the two banks that we were told that they provide about 1.747 billion. That could have been used to open over 5 new banks. And we are told that before we are done with the cleanup, government will spend not less than 8.1 billion for the cleanup. This 8.1 billion is more than the entire non-tax revenue of government.
So I know that they've released something like 5-point-something billion for.
That's for the second part.
2.2.
Yeah, that's the second part. Yeah. The first part was
2.2 billion.
2.2 billion.
This is about 5.7.
Exactly.
So we're talking about
almost close to 8 billion. And
$1.6 billion.
And that amount of money
of the taxpayers,
that amount of money is more than twice the IMF loan, the IMF facility that they gave us, and they were giving us all those conditionalities. It is according to the government estimates, it is also three times the amount required for free HHS for 3 years. That is the money that we are pumping in to do this.
That is the money that some people have wasted.
Even to add to it, it's more than the capex, the capital expenditure of the nation for 2018.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
This is amazing.
That is why we are blaming the regulator. I'm sure going forward, we must ensure that we don't get to this. The regulator must, because the guidelines are there. They can go in there, look at the sectorial ceilings are given, loan classification, how much you can lend to your a subsidiary related party. All those guidelines are there already. Okay. But it's the enforcement.
We are looking at the banking sector, financial matters, and all of those things, and quite a very interesting discussion for me today because a lot of things have been opened up. And Dr. Joanne, I want us to continue from where Habib left off in terms of the regulator and what they do. My worry, and I made that very clear in my last submission, is that I find it very difficult when I hear that the taxpayers' money is being used to prop up certain banks, only for them to, in effect, waste the money. You know, number one, how do we get that money back? Or is it even possible that we will lose a big chunk of that money?
It's a very interesting question. You've given, typical one, if you've given emergency liquidity support and the bank has gone under now, it becomes part of the debt that is being calculated by KPMG. It's going to be part of the debt. Especially as most of these support were not collateralized. When I say collateralized, if a bank is insolvent, and also illiquid, I was expecting that there should be a collateral, like a treasury bill to support it. But if it was given to an insolvent and illiquid bank, then it means that money is now going to be part of the debt.
So what you're saying is that money was given to some of these banks without any hope of recouping, just in case.
Yeah, let me quote you. IMF report 2018. I read. It said at the time of the did inspection, there were 1.1 billion uncollateralized facility. So they made a recommendation. If you read the report, since they left, they have now changed the whole methodology, even approving liquidity support. Now they have IMF has forced Bank of Ghana to put a credit committee which would assess the solvency and the short liquidity that you need and give you time and also monitor it. Because, Joe, if you listen to some of what we have read, that monies were given to support certain institutions and the monies were diverted into some corporations, it is incredible. It means there was no monitoring. Monitoring in the sense that when I give you, I will give you the money in your account in Bank of Ghana. The money is not given to you. It's given to you at Central Bank. So Central Bank is supposed to monitor. Even checks that will come through clearing, they should find out, is it in conformity with your practices of operation? Other than that, somebody takes part of the money and go and set another bank.
So rather than charge the directors or the CEOs or the board of these banks that have now gone under, can we point to the Bank of Ghana and say, you were in charge at this time, you were supposed to have monitored, you were supposed to have supervised, therefore the buck stops with you? Can we do that?
I think you're right. I mean, that is what we should do. Yeah. It's for, I mean, I always say that. Recently I heard about governor has set a new office for code of conduct. I'm saying that is not the issue for me. What about those who have hesitated? Are they staff?
What part did they play?
What part did they play?
Absolutely.
So I'm saying that we should find a term or period where we're starting this investigation, because this issue did not start yesterday. Some started as far as 2013, 2014. So anybody who had anything to do, from even the licensing, those who actually approved and signed, they should be brought back.
Absolutely.
They should be brought back to face the same, if they are found culpable, should be taken to the court and be prosecuted.
But here's a case where Bank of Ghana is cleaning up the mess which they are part of.
That is why
should we not find an independent commission to deal with this matter?
Other people have suggested that there is a need for an independent commission to go there. Because if an independent goes in, he can go with the scope of work, the terms of reference, the period. Because if this thing started in 2017, we wouldn't have these issues. Absolutely. It started back in 2017, 2014, 2013. Even the license, as I told you.
So whoever was Bank of Ghana governor at that time,
whether
or
you
who were in charge of, should be.
That is what should happen.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That should happen. If it doesn't happen, then we are just not prepared. We are not ready to do what is right. Just as we are telling the shareholders we're going to do this, find culpable, will face the law. Bank of Ghana officials, including whoever's who in charge, must face the same things that we are talking about, shareholders and directors. Because the shareholders didn't get up one morning and steal money from Bank of Ghana votes.
You handed it over
to them. And if you hand it over and you didn't monitor and something like that, two of you are jointly and severally liable.
Absolutely.
They are jointly and severally liable. If I'm a lawyer, I'll tell them. They are jointly and severally liable. We look at the Bank of Ghana staff who find themselves there. We look at the directors and possibly bring them the same thing. And then when we finish, we get the auditors who were say true and fair value. They say their accounts were true and fair. They were not fair. They were not giving any independent opinion. So the auditors, the Bank of Ghana's, the shareholders, the directors, they must all be in the sinking ship.
Habib, this case is not over by a long shot.
Not at all. Not at all. And what is even surprising is that why will he give such a huge liquidity support without even putting people in there to monitor what is happening? And like I mentioned in the beginning, because of the deteriorating macroeconomic environment, we force the banks to go into unconventional banking practices. Because they realize that we give out the loans, people are not paying, the businesses are not paying. We have to get more staff to do recovery. That is a cost. They will need vehicles to go around. And most of the time, they will not even get those monies. So what do? That is why a lot of them started coming out with this group concept of having a group and having various subsidiaries and pushing those monies into those subsidiaries. So Bank of Ghana should have seen all these things, that the banks were now branching into areas that is not familiar.
Because it's very interesting because those subsidiaries that they've opened are not regulated by the Bank of Ghana.
Are not regulated by the Bank of Ghana.
And therefore you can't touch them.
You can't touch them. But at least you will know where those monies are going to. The monies from the bank.
How do you know? How do you know?
That's why you're supposed to audit them. That's why you're supposed to audit them. So if the audits were done properly, all these things we should have been able to trace. That is what I said. There are the prudential guidelines are there. How much of your money or investment you can do in a subsidiary, in a related party, those guidelines are there. So if Bank of Ghana cares to look at the books of this financial institution, to know their lending patterns, where those monies are going, I'm sure they will have traced all these monies to such subsidiaries. But because that was not done, that is why we got into this mess.
You know, we have what we call consolidated supervision. This is what not there. In other jurisdictions in Nigeria, which the governor has just set in motion now, the financial holding companies. So when you go in, you do what we call consolidated inspection, supervision, to find out whether monies have been pushed around here and there. Unfortunately, all these while, we never have these things involved. So people created pseudo companies, pyramidal companies, you call it octopus companies, and then try to, because they know you won't have to do the whole auditing. But the question is that whenever you're giving money, I'm giving you a life support, I expect to monitor whether the oxygen or the blood being given going to you. You don't expect that the oxygen will be taken and given to a third party, for which they didn't do.
You know what just came to my mind?
So I even want to end there. There is what we call regulatory arbitrages. When we say regulatory arbitrages in finance, what it means is that you create so many companies and push money there, and then you look areas where the regulation is intrusive. Intrusive means that it is not as robust as it is. So I think the country as a nation, let me make this statement. I've been told they are doing about it. We need to look at our whole financial regulation, because we have a piecemeal or silo-based approach in regulation. We have SEC taking one side, we have Bank of Ghana taking one side, National Pension Society, Ghana Insurance is taking. No, we have to move away from it. South Africa, Kenya, and even England, after the financial crisis, what has the English done? They have moved into what we call the twin peak approach of regulation, where we have one institution, the Prudential Authority in England, now regulates banks, insurance, security and exchange products, and everything in one box.
Related industry,
All related industries are regulated by one.
Do you think the MO of the Ministry of Finance should change?
I think, if you want to address these regulatory arbitrages, the earlier time we do that, the better. Because you see, today you hear bank is being forced to give capital, and then the next day some insurance run capital. But if all these things is being done in one box, they meet. There is no coordination in regulation in Ghana. Let me make it clear. There is no coordination among the regulators. But under the system, the silo, there need to be a coordinating unit where they meet Nigeria. They meet every woman to look at what is happening in insurance.
That's why I asked about the Ministry of Finance, whether the modus operandi of the Ministry of Finance should change.
We should change it.
Absolutely.
We should change it. And we should tell them that they should meet to discuss it. Because some of them have microfinance, asset management companies, banks, savings and loans, microfinance, and they even pay pensions. Now pensions. So if you don't do what I'm doing, I'm telling you, we will find the pensions that are coming out. One day we'll get up and there'll be no pension.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, because it can crash. It can crash overnight.
It's a scary thought, Habib. It is a scary thought, knowing that you're paying so much money into pensions only to find out one day when you retire that you'll have nothing at all. Let me take some text messages coming to us, and it's been a very interesting discussion so far. Good evening. My question goes to Mr. Triahani. Can external auditors be held accountable if banks they have audited and declared to be performing collapse? Thanks from Vicky. And I think they can.
They can, because you see, if you read about Enron and Welcome, Atan Nixon.
Yeah.
And that was initially found culpable of what went wrong. He was fined $1 billion by Fed. So I believe that, and later on they had to go to Supreme Court where it was changed. But I believe when you give me a clean bill of sheet and something goes wrong within, say, 33 months,
the auditor must be held.
You cannot exonerate yourself.
Wow.
I think you cannot be. And I'm very happy that the ICA, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, have actually even said something that they are now going to investigate all the companies, all the audit firms that did that, and begin to look at sanctioning. Why they did is that under the Federation of International Auditors, they will raise issue about them, and if they don't take care, they can be sanctioned. So now they have to do these things so that when they get to the International Federation of Auditors, they will seem to have saved their skin.
And if I may just add one thing.
Yeah.
You see, the problem I have with the external auditors is that I think Bank of Ghana must also come out with a certain criteria as to who qualifies to audit some of these banks. Because sometimes what happens is that because of the audit fees, people go to choose whichever external audit that they want. But if you have a standardized fees for audit, auditing of banks, and with a law that says that, look, you cannot audit a one particular bank for more than 2 years, I'm sure there will be rotation. And when that happens, I'm sure some of these things will stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying your program on the financial sector. Indeed, the government needs to sanitize the sector. BOG can't be exonerated from the anomaly. It was its renegation and supervision that led to the happening. Since they are the sole agent empowered by government to supervise the activities of banks in the country. And this is from Chigabatia. Kwabna Kwachi from Offenso says, good evening. We are grateful to the Bank of Ghana for rescuing hundreds of Ghanaians from losing their monies through this non-performing banks. Whoever is found culpable to have caused these should face the full rigors of the law. I've been following your discussion. I'm happy it's devoid of political polarization. Well, most of us believe in Ghana. We don't believe in political parties, which makes understanding of issues difficult. I pray suggestions and recommendations will help redeem the banking sector from further deterioration. John Echo Hammond. Are banks being fair with their depositors by charging them with huge interest on loans? But the bankers take loans without any interest, and it's from the same depositors' money. We need a complete overhaul at the Bank of Ghana for their failure to properly monitor the defunct banks, leading to the mess we are talking about today. And this is from Naluyari Kletus Hoya. JOT, when did all this rot start, and where are those involved? I'm saddened by this event as a Ghanaian. We are waiting to see government's action. Kofi Jemfi appear. This one says, worse things are happening at most of the rural banks. Okay. Good evening. I'm enjoying your panelist analysis of the situation. Let's learn from this practice of bringing experts and not politicians to discuss issues about our development. Bravo to them. Anthony from Dansuman. I'm happy Dr. Etienne is raising the point today. Bank of Ghana has relationship managers for all the banks. They should show their annual reports. Secondly, what are we doing to defaulters on the system? Some people take loans but intentionally refuse to pay, and they come on air to also criticize banks. Something must be done. Aku from Tema. Okay. That's quite good. Habib, so technically, we have a few minutes to go. What can we do now? Must the BOG continue with what it's doing in order to bring the number of banks down? I've heard some people talk that we may end up with 25, with 24, or something like that. In my opinion, still too many banks.
Absolutely. I think 25 is still a big number.
So what should we do?
I think the consolidation must continue. But what is important is for the Bank of Ghana to strengthen the regulatory framework going forward. We should come out with new rules. I'm sure I heard they've come out with new corporate governance. I think this is what they should continue to do. And for the banks themselves, I'm sure some of them cause their own downfall because of their own internal practices. But like Doctor mentioned earlier, there are no corporate governance structures within. See, a lot of things are being micromanaged. the kind of people they bring on board, sometimes because of by way of relation, people are put into certain positions that they are not qualified. So they can't even structure facilities properly. And there's also a mismatch of certain liquidity. I mean, in terms of the investment that they get, short-term investment are put into long-term, short-term, I mean, fixed deposits are put into long-term investment. And so these are some of the things that we think that the banks themselves must work to correct. Whilst the regulator also intensify their regulatory framework and ensure that the regulations and the prudential guidelines that are set there are enforced. Because if those ones were enforced, I don't think we'll be where we are today. So I think this is what I think going for it, they should enforce those guidelines. Okay, Dr. Chuan.
I think the way forward is quite interesting. I mean, like emergency liquidity support. When the IMF 2017 said some banks had accessed the Bank of Ghana emergency liquidity facility for more than 3 months without security. Unfortunately, now IMF has forced Bank of Ghana to say that take collateral. And also he said have daily and bi-monthly liquidity monitoring, which is being done now. Way forward, I mean, the corporate governance directives have been given by governor. My only prayer, like Habib said, my brother, is about enforcement. Absolutely. In this country, we have all the regulations and laws. People were saying that the old banking at 763, 204 was not good. But I tell you, Joe, if you read it, it was as good as what we have, except that this one has been elaborated. Right, yeah, it was very good. Now, financial holdings. Previously, when you create these octopuses, there were no consolidated supervision. Fortunately, Bank of Ghana now has done it. And I also said, let it be happening, enforcement. They have also talked about capital regulation directives, which is good. Because previously, people were not doing capital management. You know, they take all the assets and go and put it in oil without looking at your capital. Now, under the Basel 1 and Basel 2 and Basel 3, Bank of Ghana is enforcing it now that you should do capital allocation. So way forward, although we've been knocked down, like St. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:8, we have been knocked down, but we are not destroyed. We are not destroyed. But we must make sure that enforcement, and those who also have caused these financial malfeasances, whether you're a director, I will say it here because I've been branded now. Before we came to studio, people are calling me and insulting me that I am saying that they should find themselves before the law. And I want to say to the presidency, anybody who are found culpable, irrespective of your status in the society, you must appear before appropriate law enforcement agency. Let me give you an example. In Nigeria, when they did in Professor Sansuzi did it, my brother, Obiru was a senior pastor of Redeemed Church. He had to go to prison for 4 years. And by the time he came back, they have sold all the assets and pay off the loans. So I'm saying...
You're not suggesting what has been in the news, that a board member who says he didn't know as a pastor should face the law.
Well, what I'm saying...
You're not suggesting that.
I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying that anybody find culpable...
It doesn't matter your status in society.
It doesn't matter your status in the society. The society should not respect status.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Principles and procedures must adequately be followed and be enforced. Laws are made for everybody. Somebody sold a phone. I'll tell you this before I end. He stole a phone of seven CDs. He's in prison for 12 years. And we are talking about $1.6 billion, which is close to the Chinese money we are taking for the road. And the whole capex is bigger than the capital expenditure of this nation. And we want to praise people. Look, for God's sake, let this country for a first time, let us find those who are culpable and deal with them, whether they are regulators or shareholders or directors or everybody. Other than that, we haven't done our job.
You know what my worry is in all this? The thousands of young Ghanaians who will be on the streets because of the mess by a few people. I mean,
some have died.
I have heard the Bank of Ghana say that nobody will lose their jobs, but we all know.
But that's not possible.
You know, we all know that many of them will be on the streets. Okay, so my panelists today, Mr. Habib Adam is an economist, and Dr. Richmond Etuahene, banking and corporate governance consultant from Richmond Consult. It's been very interesting listening to the two of them, and I'm sure you at home are still scratching your head. Quite a lot of things to think about the financial industry. You know, my worry is not over. This is Talking Point. My name is Jill Tiachman.